Greetings.
We have Mr. Jameson. Jameson. James was.
Wasn't sure. He said maybe.
He said he was taking his laptop and he would try to participate. Shh.
Too low in elevation.
Okay, Mr. Ron.
Hey, Jeff.
We're ready?
Without plans.
Okay, this is a meeting of the Barrington Planning Board. I'm Jeff Brand. I'm the vice chair of the planning board. James Jemison, the chair, is not with us. He's going to try to participate. He had an issue that he had to deal with out of state. People that we do have here is we have Donna Masucci, an alternate member who's going to be acting as a full member tonight because we don't have a full board. The same is true for Andrew Melnikis.
Signed into the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now I have to.
Okay, let's make that. Andrew, our full member, is here. Then we've got Ron Allard. Already introduced. Karen. I'm sorry. Carol. Ogle. Excuse me. I'm sorry, Carol. You know, they should have told me the 3 times I called you Karen when I was in the office this week. We have John Huckins, our coach from the office, Mr. Connor McIver, town administrator, providing technical support. So I guess we need a roll call to start the meeting. And Jeff Rand present.
Steve Diamond, present.
DM present.
Donna Masucci present.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Now, I will say right up front, if I am pushing you to move along, understand that right now, with the rules that they are that we had during COVID versus what we have now, Mr. Steve Diamond is participating because of COVID concerns remotely. But when we transitioned from the COVID meetings to the in-person meetings, we have to have 4 members present in the room to have a quorum. And we've got just 4 members. We do have 1 member that has to leave at a certain time. So I'm going to move things along so that we can get our business done within the allotted time, which is 2.5 to 3 hours. That sounds like a long time, but unfortunately, something's going to drag on. So please understand if I'm pushing you a little bit. I don't mean to be rude. I'm just trying to get business done well. We've got. Okay. With that said, the first order of business is approval of the October 19, 2021 meeting minutes. Do any members of the board have any comments?
I do.
All right.
So at line 109, and to insert at that point, John Huckins said, I have chosen to interpret where it says, quote, unimproved lots, that this can include improved lots. That is how 9.5.1% parentheses 5 has been enforced lately. That's what I recall he said.
That's not right, I said.
Okay. Right. What did you actually say?
Yeah, it doesn't reference his statement at all.
So the minutes, in a different spot in the minutes, I'll get back to 109, but at 129, it says the board had a lengthy discussion on Lindsay Point Road. That's a bit more of an outline than I would prefer. So I would like the minutes to reflect exactly what Mr. Huckins did say regarding 9.51 parentheses 5, and a little bit more detail on the Lindsay Point discussion.
I can, I would support it if we feel the need to add something to 109. I don't personally feel like we have the letter, which was sent, that was the end result of the discussion on Lindsay Point Road. I don't feel like there needs to be more detail for that. Lana, how do you feel?
I can look it up on the tape, and if it's different, we'll change it.
Okay.
I'll just look at.
Well, on the one on John's statement?
The whole thing on these, it's not verbatim minutes. This is what you guys decide.
Right, this is, right, the minutes are supposed to be a summary.
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes we have more detail than others. I'm suggesting that, for me personally, I don't feel we need more detail on number 3, on after line 129, but you know, I'm amenable to adding the statement because you did make a statement. It was part of that discussion. Mr. Allen, what do you think?
You know, I know we talked about it at length, but I don't know if you said anything really memorable.
Okay, what about, that's for 109, I mean 129. What about back at line 109? 9.5.
I can tell you what I said.
I think 109 says pretty well supports. That's all.
Yeah, but it was, what Mr. Diamond's referring to is that we did have a discussion on 9515 about changing it, and, you know, John Huckins did weigh in on how it's been interpreted up to this, which is the change is consistent with how it's been interpreted up to this point by not just code enforcement officer, but by the board in general.
By my previous code enforcement officers.
Right. So I wouldn't object to putting what his statement is, and Barbara and I can go in and check the tape and insert what the actual words are.
I think I agree.
All right, Andrew?
I go along with Ron.
Okay. And Donna? Okay. All right, so then we will amend to add whatever is on the tape, the code enforcement officer. And I think that the majority of the rest of us think that leaving 129 alone is okay. With that?
The reason why I can live with that. The reason why I wanted to include a little more detail was that I had a dissenting view on the commercial zoning change regarding Lindsay Point Road, and I wanted that referenceable more easily for anyone who wants the details.
I would suggest that the time to have that discussion is when we discuss the zoning ordinance changes, because that is one of the zoning ordinance changes. So that's, okay. This is for the building permit. That's a separate discussion. Agreed? Okay. Sure. All right. So I need somebody to make a motion. Oh, I'll tell you what, I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting on October 19th, 2021, with the addition of the code enforcement's statement on 9.5.1 parents 5 after line 109. All right, motion made by Jeff Brand, seconded by Ron Allard. Roll call vote. Okay, Donna Masucci.
Suchi, aye.
Andrew Miller.
EMI.
Okay, Ron Allard.
Allard, aye.
Steve Diamond.
Done.
Jeff Brand, aye. All right, minutes are approved as amended. So now that that's out of the way, we'll address the cases. And before we do, though, I just want to make a note here, or need people to be aware of something, which is, so the Barrington Planning Board rules of procedure, which are posted on the website, has a requirement, which has been recently also integrated into our regulations because of problems that we've been having over the past couple of years. So I want to read this to everyone so they understand where we're coming from. Once an application has been accepted as complete, any additional materials requested by the board and or submitted by the applicant, town staff, abutters, or any other party or entity withstanding to appear and provide comment shall provide those materials to the land use office no later than 1 week prior to the meeting. Then the land use office shall provide these materials to the board 4 days prior to the meeting. There's a couple of important reasons why that needs to be adhered to. One is so that the board gets the materials in time to do a review, check the regulations, give it some thought, and be prepared for intelligent discussion at the meeting. The second part is that Barbara Irvine is going to post the documents on the website tied to the application so that the public who has an interest in abutters in whatever your application is, they have time to review it and provide input to the board when it's time for public comment, public hearings. So why do I bring this up? It's because we started putting our foot down about a year ago because somebody dropped a set of plans on us the day before a meeting. And that individual came to understand that if people drop materials on the board and we don't have time to prepare and we don't have time to post these materials so that the public can look at them, then we're fully within our rights to just continue your application and not discuss it at whatever meeting it was scheduled for. And we did that to an applicant, delayed them a month last year. What happened today was this afternoon, the board members got 2 emails, one from somebody working from the town and the other an applicant submitting materials after 2 o'clock this afternoon for a meeting tonight. That's unacceptable. And fair warning, if you do that, you should ask for a continuance, but if you don't, the board may do it for you. Now, for the 2 items that were submitted tonight, it depends on how they're being utilized. I've been informed that in one case, the applicant just wanted to give us the materials and he's going to ask for a continuance, so that would be acceptable and appropriate. The other case, I think that the materials were submitted for us to consider. I will be polling the board to ensure that they've had an opportunity, or the board takes the opportunity to review it prior to making comment. So, fair warning. All right. The second order of business here, the application is from Sunset Rock. Do we have a representative? And we also,
Super. Just sit here.
and we have the CMA engineer also here to represent. Come on down. And I will ask the board. So this afternoon, we received an email that was an order for a review by CMA that was provided to us, which I think it was going to be part of the discussion tonight.
Did you submit something?
We just submitted a task order
Right,
to do the planning board.
right. I understand. This afternoon. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, let me just introduce myself and
Yeah.
tell you why I'm here. My name's Ari Pollock. I'm an attorney at Gallagher, Callahan and Gartrell. We're in Concord, New Hampshire. We're here for the applicant Sunset Rock. With me this evening in the gallery is Eric Stevenson of Brock's Industries and Mike Wright of the American Reserve. You'll recall that we were here in September and asked that the town engage peer review services, and I believe that this gentleman is, we haven't met, but I believe he's from CMA and that he's doing the on behalf of the town and the board. My understanding is also that while our engineer and this gentleman are in conversation, the peer review work is not completed. And so perhaps the best thing we can do this evening is to continue the conversation until your December meeting, where we hopefully would have a report in front of the board. I certainly heard and heed your warning about having things submitted in advance of the meeting. I don't know what you've received today. I'm happy to receive it and view it and tell you what I think of it, or do that outside of the meeting. But I also, just before I stop, I wanted to just make mention that there was also concern when we were here the last time that the city of Dover may not be aware of the peer review process or have an ability to interact with that process. And my understanding is that they're involved in the conversation. So that notification has occurred. And I'm certain that the CMA will be, with their opinion as a budding property owner.
Yeah, it says, understand the work request does actually state that they will be communicating with those as part of the review process. Yeah, so that, yes.
Yes, I think there's a little bit of miscommunication here, and certainly I apologize if I played any part in it, but the goal of sharing the proposed task order, which is why the applicant hasn't received it, because it's a proposed task order with the planning board, is to make sure with a complex application like this that's going to have additional state review, that the planning board is comfortable with the scope, the proposed scope of the review. Obviously, our goal with the third-party review isn't to put undue burden on the applicant to pay for a review that the board finds redundant. So it's important to balance that scope so it's specific, addresses what the board wants, but isn't too much and doesn't put that undue burden on the applicant. So for this one, that draft task order that you received today is just that, a draft task order, looking for feedback from the board. Representative from CMA is here to address any questions, to make sure that the board's comfortable with that draft task order. Once that's finalized, we'll send it to the applicant for review and acknowledgement, then it'll be signed, and CMA will begin their review as laid out in the draft task order, working with Dover, the applicant, to collect all of the available information and perform an efficient review on behalf of the town and the applicant. And so I don't think the applicant's intent, that was part of their point of coming here tonight, but for staff, sending materials to the board as soon as it comes in will always be a practice. Certainly it's the board's discretion when and how you want to discuss that. In this case, in order to continue the process moving, if the board is interested in offering input on that draft task order, Josh is here to answer any questions and help define that scope, and so we can get that third party underway.
Okay, well, as I recall, the conversation from September is we are interested in this. We said we would like to take a look at it before it got signed to ensure that, and I'll address this in a second, a couple of issues or concerns that the board had are addressed as part of this request. And I understand that the issue of the material coming to the board wasn't the applicants, which is why I referenced that it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's the applicant or someone working for us, it's still got to get into it in a timely manner. So yes, we have an interest, but I understand what you're saying. All right. So the board is, have you, Mr. Diamond, other board members, have you had an opportunity to peruse this? I mean, it is short, it's essentially 2 pages.
I did.
You did? Okay. Donna, you have it there? Okay. No, do you have the
I don't even,
to look at? Can someone give her a copy? I have 2 copies, so. So while she's looking at that, and if then are the other board members, are you comfortable that we can discuss this? I mean, I am comfortable. I did get an opportunity and it is short and so Donna can chime in at the end. There were just a couple of things when we were looking at this that, as you note here, there were concerns, as the board stated back in September. Obviously, we have to make the decision, but we don't want to adversely impact the applicants that neither do they impact a city well. That wouldn't be good. And so the board has concerns. I see that CMA has kind of looked at that and looking at where you laid out, you seem to understand what the issue is with respect to the level at which that is proposing to be dug to. There were a couple of, there was one question and a couple of concerns that the board previously stated. One was, you said there were other materials that you had not received.
There's materials from the city of Dover we've not received.
Okay.
And there's still some materials from Mike Wright or Brock's that we're looking for.
Okay. Have you,
We just spoke.
I know you haven't started a review yet. Have you communicated what you need to those people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had a meeting today with Mike Wright, and we've asked for the existing AOT permit, their AOT permit that's in application that's in process. Also, Brock's existing groundwater permit, groundwater discharge permit. So that's been between yesterday and today. We've asked for those.
Okay. So there's no issue with the applicant supplying what?
We have those materials, and we're certainly able to supply them. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I don't have what you're reading from. Is it out on the table? I'm sorry. Now I do.
This is something we put together today after the information that we received from Mike Wright.
I rest my case.
Well,
None of us have seen.
I can feel the aggression, but I didn't send it and I didn't receive it and I don't know what it says. And so, for once in my life, I'm innocent.
You are. It's the guy to your right.
And I don't, and he seems like a real nice guy too. So we're all, I think, working in the same direction.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that is rude. CMA engineers is not at fault at all. They provided information as was available. It's the board's discretion to review it. If you want to review it, you can. If you don't have to. But staff sending it along as it's available isn't always false. The same giving arrows that a consultant.
Okay, that was forward. Thank you. All right.
So, Chair.
Okay, so
just
the only the concerns that the board had, that the reason we kind of want to take a look at this is, I think this covers everything that we were looking at. The other board members can chime in. The couple of things, or one aspect of this that we were looking at is, if CMA were to evaluate this, I mean, this is outside of the board's. I would lock on you is, and not to do an extensive re-engineering, but the board was thinking that if you could tell us what the implications were as far as the depth that they're proposing to go to, which at least to date seems to, at least the board's understanding, that is an issue as to whether raising the floor of the proposed cut, what the implications of that are, and also whether the distance from Dover's well to the cut, whether that makes a difference or not.
Yep.
Those are the two things, as I recall, that the board.
I think we want a review of Dover's comments
Right.
for reasonableness, you know. It's told the consultant up there about money. So Rox is, you know, they're being too conservative, perhaps unreasonable.
As initial discussions we had with the city of Dover, they were working with Emery and Garrett, which is the hydrogeology specialist, and they're evaluating on the city's end. We're going to review that information, whatever else the city has put together. And sometime in the near future, hopefully this week, we're having a talk with the city to see exactly what they have, their thoughts, concerns, and such.
And I think it should make clear to Dover that, you know, the applicant looking to us to move this forward in a reasonable time frame.
Mhm.
And they have to match the time frame. You know, they can't delay things.
Correct.
Which is why they're pondering. They gotta move forward.
Make it clear to them.
All right. And Donna, Andrew, Steve Diamond, do you have anything?
Yes, in the recently submitted document, item C, it says, it appears existing permitted area shows a quarry floor at 36 feet mean surface level, and the proposed expansion shows a quarry floor at 90-foot mean surface level with a step transition between the two areas. So there's the 5 or so acre expansion of the area we're talking about. I guess my question is, what is the area involved that is going to be 90 feet deep?
One thing I should say, Steve, this is a proposal to do the work. They haven't done the work yet. So.
That's on the plans. I'm not sure what that is.
Right. I mean, it's certainly a detail on the plan set. I don't know it as I sit here now.
Okay. All right. He's not even said. Okay, so do you understand what it is? Trying to communicate?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, if it helps, I mean, I've had a chance to look through this a couple of minutes. I see the time frame is 4 to 6 weeks, and the proposed budget is $6,500. I mean, it certainly is consistent with what we were anticipating. And 4 to 6 weeks, I think, put us probably just beyond your December meeting. And so, I mean, rather than come back prematurely, maybe it's our suggestion that we continue the matter until January's meeting, in the hopes that we'd have a peer review recommendation and the board could have it well in advance of your meeting, time to review it and maybe take action upon it, or at least move forward substantively at that meeting.
Yeah, typically the process is they do a review, they give you back comments.
Right.
You respond to the comments. The farther along down that process, better. CMA also has another one that they review that we're going to be discussing tonight, where they work together and resolve almost all the comments. So,
Yeah.
a couple of comments that both the applicant and CMA wanted to discuss with the board.
And
That sounds, that's,
Yes. I was just going to say, we certainly will approach this from the same perspective of trying, number one, being as quick and responsive as we can be, even with the materials we stand requested right now. And then, of course, try to work out whatever we can behind the scenes so that a clear recommendation comes to the board.
You want to go to the continue the first meeting in January?
Could I just ask what that date would be?
First Tuesday.
Very forth.
January.
Sounds great to me.
Make a motion.
Just to make it clear though, that the money for the review has to be given to the town to get the review started, so the town has the funds available to pay it. So the sooner you guys can bring that money to the town, the sooner they can start the review.
Understood. And if we create a delay, we will certainly suffer the,
I just wanted to make it everybody up front that that's what we're looking at.
thank you.
previous comments notwithstanding, I wanted to move this along. We did want to see it, but we don't want to hold things up. So
Yes, I appreciate that.
glad we can move this along.
Make a motion, we continue to January 4th, application 36-4-GR-20 SR.
I second.
So motion, Ron Allard, second, Jeff Brand. Roll call vote. Steve Diamond,
Diamond Eye?
Jeff Brand, aye. Ron Allen.
Allard, aye.
Andy, am I?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, it's unanimous, and thank you for patience and moving on. Thank you.
Thank you and see you next year.
Yeah. Yeah, you will. That's gonna be tough during the holidays. Which one? All first.
Even in the folder.
Yeah, you can just drag it up. Folder. I bet you will.
I'll just get you started.
All right, with the other, um, without objection from the other board members, I just wanted to do a check here because I think that there's a couple items on this list that are, this one being one of them, that's, could be a lengthier discussion. So I was going to check to see if there are any of the other applicants that are simply here for continuance, which would be very quick, and then we'd be able to move things along. So for 11 lot conservation subdivision. Okay, yeah, Mr. Geyer, right? Okay, Barry, are you just here for a continue? Meadowbrook.
We would like some input from the board.
Okay, all right, so there is discussion, just wanted to check. And there's also one here for 2A tactical. You're just looking for a continuance. Okay, so you guys supplied us with a new drawing, but you're just here for a continuance. All right. Then I would propose we go ahead and take care of him so he can leave well. Not zero problem.
They're gonna do, Chris, if they're just trying to do the continuum.
Okay.
I was just trying to get the continuance.
She thought you were skipping him.
No,
No, we're taking him.
we're taking him, and I just wanted to let him go home, so he didn't have to sit through all the. Oh, I'm sorry.
He gets paid by that.
I'll go home.
Okay. All right, then we're going to, and I'll note on the agenda it has 2 3s. I just renumbered mine, the second 3 to a 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is either number 4 or number 5, depending on which one you're looking at. 25163 RC 21-SR. So.
Scott,
Yes, sir.
from New Hampshire Land Consultants, just real quick, give you a little update on what we've done since the last meeting. As you know, we had a meeting with the Board of Selectmen on the 18th to talk about Bumford Road realignment. That went well. One of the things that came out of that, and I think we talked about it at the last meeting, was whether the land was going to be an easement or a transfer. The ultimate decision was that it's going to be a transfer to the town, that corner of the property. It has been submitted to DOT for comments. We haven't received anything back yet. And we reached out to Josh to get that communication open, but obviously we haven't submitted anything to him. We did have a meeting with the fire chief too to get clarification on his comments on the 22nd. We've got that. And we just like a continuance while we deal with DOT and get that final layout so that we can put that into the plan set, submit that.
Usually to continue too.
Might as well do December, and then if we don't have stuff, I'd like to come back and give the board an update anyways. Okay. Sure. What's that? Yeah, and chances are it will probably be a continuance, but I'd like to come back and give that.
Just why I got you here, the plan, I still showed the 50-foot fronts in the back, and it looks like down the road,
Okay,
that zone, they're both 75.
Yep.
Right out last time, that might change your building location a little bit.
yeah, I'm pretty,
Does that balance work?
yeah, I'll make sure it gets off the plan.
One on Bumford Road, we're actually trying to change our regulations so that would be smaller. So in order to make that building stay in that location, you might have to go to the ZBA. So I just thought if you're stuck with that position, trying to make it all as a other buffer stuff, you might want to start an application with the zoning board.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, it meets it.
75 work?
Oh, one of the other things too, just to point out, we do have to submit a lot line adjustment with the town. The Board of Selectmen agreed to waive the fees on that, so we'll be getting the lot line adjustment into the town once we get through, or at least a little ways through DOT.
Do we, application 1-16-R21-FR to the December 7th meeting?
I second. So motion made by Ron Allard, seconded by Jeff Brand. Roll call vote. Donna Masucci.
Suchi, aye.
Indy, I.
Alan,
Steve Dine.
Diamond Eye.
Brand aye. All right.
Thank you.
Now, back on schedule here to Dub Development.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Christopher Berry with Berry Surveying and Engineering, presenting Dove Development. First, I'll take just a minute to update you on the project path that it's taken since the start of the project current. So we came before the board a few months back. There were a number of questions, comments that came out of that meeting. And we had also recently just received comments from CMA engineers. We had also received alteration of terrain comments. And so we sort of took all, pulled them, and prepared a final plan set that you have here before you. Those were then submitted back to CMA engineers, who then issued a second comment letter regarding project plans. We had an opportunity to discuss second comment letter with Josh, and then respond accordingly. And then a third comment letter was published based on that response and conversation. If the board will remember the last public hearing that we had on this 2 months back, approved all the requested waivers for the project site. The conditional use permit was granted as part of the project yet. So at this point, the final comments that CMA engineers and I have together, there are a handful of them, and I think Josh and I at least agree that the ones that are outstanding, with the exception of the small typo that needs to be replaced, are really matters for alteration of terrain and state permitting, and aren't necessarily site review requirements, whereas they have to do with treatment volumes and things of that nature. So I can go through, Mr. Chairman. I understand that you kind of want to keep the meeting on schedule. I can go through the changes within the plans, or I can hit the major highlights brought up. I think macro standpoint, PUD questions are now covered calculations on sheet 29 of the set, which discuss areas, community uses, coverages pertaining to residential uses. There were, Mr. Allard brought up a question of headlights. We actually redesigned that first building and redesigned the vertical geometry to determine that the headlights would stay within the first 8 feet or somebody's garage doors, that they wouldn't swing across the second story. There were questions about architectural views. We provided full architectural views with building heights, things of that nature. So unless you want to get into the weeds of all of the things that have taken place in the last 60 days, I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that the board might have.
I have some thoughts.
Not yet.
Here we go.
All right. I guess while we have Josh Bouchard here, maybe we ought to have a discussion on the unresolved issues that are in his letter.
Sure.
With that?
Yep.
So there seem to be 3 unresolved, but one of them is just a typo, okay?
Yeah.
The ledge. So there seem to be 3 unresolved issues.
So the first revolves around when you are in an urban setting with closed drainage, tight pipe drainage. So you have curbing, basins, piping, which then ships it off to where it's going. You typically have deep sumps, 4-foot sump or deeper with a hood. It traps grit, grease, oil, solids before it sends the stormwater down to the next device in the treatment train. And we understand that, and Josh and I actually agree with that. In this particular case, because of the Hampshire Heritage Bureau hits, as we all call them, having to do with a multitude of different turtle species within the area, Fish and Game has historically required we remove those deep sumps and those hoods from those basins, and we further rely on the forebays within stormwater systems to be the first line of defense. And so I was joking with Josh that I'm happy to show deep sumps and hoods on the plans and within the project. Alteration of terrain will likely tell me to take them out, and Kim Tuttle from Fish and Game would likely require that I take them out.
If I recall correctly, the discussions in the past is that Fish and Game has gotten thrown into the middle of all this, which is delays. They're understaffed to try to, right now, they do have a say. So it's not just DES, it's Fish and Game. So it sounds like you're talking about the double.
Yeah.
It does complicate the process. Yeah, it does complicate the process.
Okay. So it says here, though, CMA recommends all catch basins within the roadway be deep sump catch basins and outside no sump.
That has been our interpretation of the rules. But that's how we've designed projects to have in a rural setting.
Is that because the catch basins within the road will be graded and therefore there isn't a concern?
Yes.
All right. So how do you feel about that split?
I personally don't care. I agree that deep sumps and hoods are appropriate. I just don't want to be stuck in a situation where we all agree on something and then Fish and Game tell me to do something different.
Well,
That's
Barry said for the non-roadway ones, then you both, the state's not going to buy it. And
Correct.
So it doesn't make sense to proceed down that path, and it makes sense to eliminate those deep catch basins for the off-road.
Yep.
So now the issue is, what about on-road? Have they raised an issue, or do you think it'd be an issue if you had a deep catch basin in roadway?
They have raised it as a concern on many other projects. Our wildlife assessment that was required to be submitted to Fish and Game recommends against deep sumping catch basins.
Okay, so it doesn't matter, roadway or non-roadway.
Right.
They're not buying. All right, so how does CMA feel then about, I'm asking because you said here, you went with off-roadway no basins, but deep catch basins in the roadway. So
That is our recommendation unless AOT says you can't do it. So if AOT comes back and says no deep sumps anywhere in the project, then I think that is the rule. But otherwise, because we do similar projects, and that's how we've interpreted the rules. No one's put deep sumps in the roadway and no sumps outside the roadway.
but Chris, your experience is they're not going to buy them.
Not in more rural areas, specifically with that type of species known to be in the area. But I mean, I think Josh points out here in his letter that, you know, basically he defers to DES on the matter.
Right.
That's all really asking the board to do.
So it's
I think jointly, that's what we're asking the board to do.
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right.
I think as a matter of procedure, we have to follow the regulations. I think it does not require to put it in. CMA recommending it should be in. Rule say it should be in. Certainly believe Chris that says the state's gonna take them out. I think that's the process that happened, I think.
All right. But we don't want to cause excessive work on the engineering firm's part, either engineering firm, if there's no chance of success. So
I think if Chris can convince Josh and Josh changes his recommendation, I think
Well, I think Josh's recommendation is that they defer to
right.
the state.
Okay.
but if you don't put it in, they don't.
So-
Put it in, they take it out.
So how does this affect the application? I think we've all recognized now, based on both your recommendations, that putting the deep catch basins, the sumps in the off-road, that's not going to,
No, and really serves no purpose.
right, and they serve no purpose.
I mean,
Yeah.
in my response to alteration of terrain, simply bring the topic up and let them come. You don't have to draft basins in and take them out and.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Well,
meant to check, I forgot to check. So are the plans now, do they have basins in or out?
No, they're
They're out.
no sumps.
And that's why the comment came up, because we reviewed the plans and there was no sumps in the catch basin.
Well, the sumps do serve a purpose, as you mentioned, as Chris Berry mentioned in the beginning. It's essentially it's a settling tank. It's another opportunity for potential contaminants to be removed. So until I at least understand what the nature of the wildlife concern is, and perhaps have the opportunity to suggest adjustments to the depth or to the how steep, how quickly they they get to that depth, et cetera. It'd be nice to keep them in if they can be.
So I guess to comment on that, the species of concern either fallen, if they're too small, they fall on the top of the bait, or we're also finding they're actually starting at the end of pipe, working backwards, and they're getting a deep sump, unless it's filled with silt, holds water. And so the turtle essentially falls into a pool of water, and they are not adapted to grabbing onto a pipe and doing a pull-up and pulling themselves out, and so they die. And so they have, Fish and Game has concerns that these species are these structures that are well-intentioned, and they are killing them.
Yeah, and the wildlife study identified
Yes.
this particular species in that area.
Could the edge of this sump be at a slope to allow them to escape?
Can he see me or no?
No. Oh, well, I don't know.
If you look in your screen, you should be able to.
Not when you're sharing your screen.
Okay.
Stop sharing.
Okay.
That's embarrassing. Oh, I gotcha.
That's why the technical was there.
There you go. So,
None of us can operate this.
so
Wasn't for
Steve, you can see my hands?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So you have the grade of a catch basin where water flows in,
Mhm.
the cylinder of the basin, you have the pipe out. We're talking about the sump below that. So you typically just continue the concrete down 4 feet or more, depending on the pipe size. That's the sump that we're talking about. And if we put a hood on it, it's even worse because there's no way for them to get out of it, but it's just a reversed sort of snout. So that's what we're talking about. So there's no way to slope that or bevel that or change it in any way to allow for them to leave. That's why the recommendation is to just remove them.
Got it. Okay.
So how would people feel about, him submitting it without the sumps, but raising the issue for the in-roadway sumps, see what the state has to say?
Hate to be dramatic, but we need some coverage for us, that some documentation that says it's okay to remove it.
Well,
Is the state
do our
or
regulations require these? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think you even discuss them
Right.
because
I think, no, it's not our regulation. Our regulations simply say they need to come up with give us the plan
So it's
for
an
the
AOT
drainage
thing we have to worry
system.
about.
We get it reviewed by a third party, it doesn't meet state requirements, but the state is the one that approves this now. Okay. Sound like an acceptable resolution. All right, so that won't require any plan changes. Application.
no problem. All right, so
The next one is a typo.
that's a typo.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I think kind of raised this as a concern. Well, where this is the flow that goes off of the new development onto the previous development. Right?
Yes, partially.
And sizing of that, this is the retention pond or rain garden that's south of the Christmas stuff.
Yes.
That then flows into the pond. So,
So can I describe the?
can we go through that? Because I know it was your concern. It was our concern.
So when we're talking about stormwater, we now have two concerns, well, three concerns. We have rate, volume, and we have treatment. I just want to point out, I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Barrington regulations discuss treatment at all. They discuss rate and they discuss volumetric increases. So what Josh has pointed out, and I think we even discussed at the first planning board meeting, has to do with treatment, not rate, not volume, not how much water we're dispersing off the project site. So when Community Way was conceived, there was a stormwater cell rain garden placed in this location here. There's a certain amount of impervious surface that existed on the site prior to us showing up to redevelop Community Way.
Yes, the park.
That's right. So that, from a treatment standpoint, that's a positive. Anything you can do to improve the existing treatment volume that takes place on existing impervious surfaces, use of redevelopment is a positive thing. So we did not have, and there is not room on site to enlarge this rain garden. So when this Community Way was developed, the water quality volume for Community Way was calculated because that's the new impact, the new development. And the stormwater cell was designed for that water quality volume. Now, that's not to say that all of this impervious surface doesn't end up in that treatment cell. It does. But that treatment cell is not sized for all of that impervious surface from a water quality standpoint. So now, and that was accepted by the board then, and it was accepted by the prior review engineer. So now we're proposing to extend Community Way out. There's about 200 feet of impervious surface in the new Community Way that is directed to that same rain garden. And so we've proven that we have the water quality volume to accept the 200 feet as well as all of the existing Community Way that's been constructed. And we've proven that all of the stormwater that is sent from that 200 feet can be accepted by that rain garden. But we still have not treated this 39,000 square feet of existing parking lot, or we've not included that in our water quality calculation. We've submitted that to Alteration at Terrain. They did not comment back on that. So we assumed that that was an acceptable practice. Josh points out that this area is physically not included in the calculation for water quality volume, but the stormwater cell is designed for all the events that Barrington requires. So that's where we're at. And here again, I think Josh is, so he's been lengthy about it. I think we've agreed that, again, this treatment issue is an alteration of terrain item and should likely be either approved or not approved by alteration of terrain if they find it acceptable.
Comment, Josh?
That pretty much summarizes everything. So our concern is, forget the number, it's about 68,000 square feet is flowing to this rain garden, but it's only sized to treat about half of that volume or half of that square footage. So from the start, that rain garden is undersized and is not going to perform as it should.
It can handle the volume and flow. But
I didn't review.
with respect to pretreatment, that's where the issue.
Correct. And if twice as much water is flowing to it, it's not going to function properly. And that's our concern. And actually, it's even more concerning now because there are no sumps in the catch basin. So you're not getting any pretreatment before it even gets there. And I don't know how many catch basins are upstream of that, but there's a handful in the new development.
You want to go over at the bottom of that 200 feet there on the northerly side, wasn't there? At one point, was there a
There's a pair of basins and you questioned,
pair of basins?
yeah, you questioned the grate capacity, proved the grate capacity worked, but also didn't. So we put double grates on it.
All right, and then, but wasn't there, or is there, rain garden, detention pond
Yes.
in that corner?
Yep. So on this, so in this location, we have a gravel wetland that captures all from the developed site. But we're talking about
It's just that 200 foot.
just
down.
this area here. That's right. Yeah. I just would point out, just so you know, the existing community way does have sumps and hoods in it because that was done 3 or 4 years ago prior to this new stuff we get to deal with. So there is pre-treatment at the front end of the project. But this 200 feet would propose not to have that pre-treatment.
What was the basis for sizing Rain Garden 102 in the 2019 project?
The basis was the inclusion of all the stormwater off the slope from a flow and volume standpoint, obviously the developed site, and then the basis for the design of treatment volume was the new proposed infrastructure.
So is the nature of the concern around water quality that is being treated in the rain garden? Is that around turbidity or nitrogen? What is the main things that the rain garden is doing regarding water quality from those areas?
You have a treatment cell that is designed for water quality volume treatment. It functions to take TSS out, phosphorus, nitrogen, all of those items. So I think one of the things that I pointed out to Josh is that it may be that in our operations and maintenance manual for the project site, there needs to be a more frequent inspection. And as Josh pointed out, there may need to be more frequent modifications to that biomedia over time because it's essentially pulling duty. You know, if you think about a coffee filter, this operates the same exact way as a coffee filter. We're just pushing more water to the same coffee.
Is there any way that some of that runoff from the 200 feet without impacting the size, the gravel wetlands that you're draining the rest of that development?
No, it's elevation based. So we would have to, well, and we don't have the right of way width for it. Because we don't even own and control outside the right of way. This area here. We don't own this area. So this gravel wetland is placed based on elevation where we can discharge.
Right, but that's within the boundaries.
That's right.
Right now, so you've got I'm just asking, so you've got 200 feet, you got the runoff coming down there. Is at the 50 foot down the slope, is it still above that gravel wetland?
Yes, it's below it.
It's below the.
Right. So your question, and I asked the same question when we designed these, is there any drop of water that's not accounted for that could go into that gravel well? Elevationally, no. So I think Josh points out again that this is an issue for alteration of terrain.
You know, from my perspective, I understand that, you know, this rain garden 102 was done under the previous project, you know, in drains and everything, under rules that existed 3-4 years ago. I know for me personally, it never occurred to me that you would be taking water from another development or part of the roadway and flowing that into 102. It's designed for what it is that you were proposing as a project at the time. I don't recall there being any suggestion that future development might tie into flow water to that particular system.
Well, I think it's relatively implied when you have a linear roadway that then continues upslope at the same.
But that doesn't mean, well, it doesn't mean that we would think of or understand that that's implied, is that if you do development, I guess, you know, except for this 200 foot of roadway, this development, just like the Christmas Stuff development below it, that all the water is being taken care of and handled within that project.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wouldn't necessarily occur to us that you're going to be taking water from some other project. I guess the way we would normally think about it is then, you know, you would handle that on the site of the new development. Wouldn't necessarily be flowing it into another development. I gotta say, 5.5 years on the board, I don't remember that occurring. I don't know, what is the rest of the board?
I have some questions just about water. Just a couple of questions. I noticed that you have tree line in front of like between the.
Yes.
Are you going to have signage in the front, something to show people that it's back there, because that thing.
So we, just as a reminder, we own the community way infrastructure. And we've had discussions with the owners, Garth specifically of Christmas Dove, at some point putting up a community sign there that services everybody within the development.
That was one of my concerns.
Yeah.
You have a great thing back there, just somebody might not notice it. Second thing is, I know there's no sidewalks.
No, there's sidewalk.
There is.
There is. Well, so community way, it's designed as sidewalk all the way up to loading zone. And we would propose to extend that sidewalk all the way out to the cul-de-sac here. And then the planning board actually asked 2 meetings ago for us to extend sidewalk up and further into development, provide for additional parking, and then wrap that sidewalk around so that you can essentially do a nice walk through the entire development on relatively safe sidewalks.
Because I noticed the vegetation that you have around the just, that would.
Hmm.
Mailboxes.
So we're still working with the postmaster, but we're currently proposing a gang box here at the end of the cul-de-sac. There wouldn't be individual mailboxes for a project like this.
Actually, that would be kind of convenient because then you wouldn't have to worry about backing cars up on the roadway or on the cul-de-sac.
You just need to convince them to get into our.
All right, Kate.
I'm good.
Okay, so.
Well, actually, yes, I'll ask you one
Thank you.
question. You've addressed all Chief Walker's concerns.
Yes, yep, I believe so.
My only question is, to me, it's a redundant statement. Placement of no parking signs on an access in which fire lane is restricted by parking. In front of the multi-purpose building, you've got all cars parking out front.
Yeah, I think he's referring to the fire lanes and this, which would
I guess my question
Any
is,
of the roadways.
is the fire lane, because it's not in front of the building.
So any roadway that provides access is actually considered a fire lane. And so if it's not wide enough to be considered fire lane with parking on the side signs, that comment was stemmed from his desire for us to show additional parking on the project in total, which we've done here in this corner.
Okay. It just, if it's a fire lane, there's nothing in front.
Well, in a commercial setting, certainly the old fire lanes in front of large big box stores, anything that provides fire service is considered a fire lane.
I guess the confusion is, it's not entirely clear from what the fire chief wrote about whether or not parking can be between the fire lane and the building. That's my understanding of what was unclear from what he said.
Okay.
Well, apparently you spoke with Chief Walker and he's okay with the parking district down the road. But
Yeah,
the reason I ask is if you, and I get how tall the multi-use building is. How big is it?
40 feet to the peak.
40 feet. Depending how far out you have to go and depending how big the ladder is you have in the truck, you can't put the ladder. You only put the ladder a certain distance for a certain angle. That's why I asked. Usually have nothing out front.
Okay, so going back to the issues with respect to rain garden number 2. Oh. Whichever. So if I understand what you're saying is that you're both proposing that leave it up to the AOT process to resolve this particular issue.
Do you know if AOT caught the fact that the rain garden is undersized for the impervious area? I know you sent me their comment letter. But
They didn't.
it is quite the package. So I'm not sure if they caught it.
They didn't comment on it. Whether they caught it, I don't know.
Okay, so we don't know that it's whether it wasn't an issue for them or that it was an oversight on them. Correct?
Oh, when I get a permit, I guess. I mean, you're asking me to specifically ask a reviewer to find fault with my design. I'm not going to do that.
Well, they can't find a fault that doesn't exist, right?
Or, and no offense, or they may agree with our assessment of it and our methodology of it.
That's true. So, but the problem I'm having here is we don't know if anybody ever asked the question internally when they were reviewing Was it, I go back to, was it an oversight or did somebody go, yeah, not a problem? And I understand your comment is you don't want to ask somebody to find fault. But that's why I said, if there is no fault, if they're okay with this, I mean, for me personally, I don't want to speak for the whole board, but if AOT looks at this and they say, we don't have a problem with this, then I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I
If
think
we're going to trust that process, I just want to ensure that they're evaluating everything they should have in this was not. And I also understand your position.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be flip, but
No,
I would just point out that treatment is not addressed in your regulations.
I understand it's not, but there's a lot of things that aren't in our regulations that that we rely on the state. When it comes to wells and sewer and, AOT permits. I mean, we kind of defer to the state because they have the resources that we don't. No disrespect to CMA, who, and I want to make a comment. Previous comment, that was the review that we got on this particular project. I was pleased with it. For me personally, as a member of the board,
You really
and this was your first big project that we had given you. Then I
We tried to be thorough.
yeah. So I always try to keep the good with the bad. So we seem to be some substantial comments, good comments. Sure, Mr. Berry, I will be able to see by his face whether he was happy.
Oh, it was a good, clean fight.
Yeah.
We worked through everything but
Yeah,
really two issues.
And I think that's representative of the fact that we're down to 3 issues, and I think Josh and I, with the exception of this one methodology item, we agree fundamentally that it's an issue that should be taken up by alteration of terrain.
Okay, so we're all in agreement. The problem is, how do we ensure that AOT looks at this particular issue?
I don't know. I mean, when I
Rest of the board.
hand somebody a package and they review it, in fact, this is how we can ensure it. We specifically stated on the treatment sheet that's used in alteration of terrain that is reviewed by the reviewer in the comment section below, which Josh probably read, this is the methodology used for sizing this system. So it's not like we hit it in a 100-page plan set and a 300-page drainage document.
Yeah, it does show up in the water quality form.
Right.
Worksheet.
Right. We spell it out right at the bottom in the comment.
All right. Okay. On the previous issue, when we were talking about sump or no sump, the agreement we came to was, okay, no sumps, but add a note saying, no sumps for this reason, and which would kind of flag it to AOT.
AOT's already reviewed this with no sumps, and they're okay with that.
Oh,
That didn't come up in there either.
I think the point that Chris is trying to make is the town's regulations don't require the things that you keep discussing. So you don't have the authority to enforce state regulations, you only have the authority.
we're not trying to do that. We have a question that should be answered by the state regulations that we are relying upon. We're relying on the state in this particular case to do the right thing and ensure that there's proper drainage, treatment. They're reviewing this plan under AOT. So we're not trying to enforce some regulations that we don't have or we don't own. The only thing is we have a consulting engineering firm we're paying who's raised an issue and trying to figure out how that gets.
You're paying? Okay, you're paying. Oh, just checking.
At our request.
But I think we have an obligation to look out for the public interest in environmental issues.
Understood.
We have an issue here now, it's been identified. I think it's it's a difficult one to deal with, but I think you've offered a solution where maybe we can take care from the maintenance point of view and do more frequent inspections and upgrades. To me, I think that seems like the most reasonable path ourselves out of this thing.
Well, as I recall, I mean, and yours, that, I mean, the state has regulations concerning sumps and pre-treatment. And so, you know, they've said this meets those requirements. Then, I mean, I'm good with that. I mean, the board, like I said, we're relying on the state review process to catch these things and say that these things.
I think we have an obligation to protect the environment. Our
do.
engineer, our engineer said there's a problem. The applicants agreed there's a problem. Let's put something in the trying to address the problem, regardless of what the state does. You know, I think that to me, whether the state misses it or not, at least we put something in to try to get the treatment to the level we want to see.
So on the last issue, it simply says, I think the answer is you don't object to the proposed deviation, and if yes says it's good, you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So that's not really an issue.
Nope, not an issue. We were just pointing it out because technically it didn't meet the reg.
Okay. So, but just like the board, we can waive town regulations. I'm sure that the state can also waive their own regulations when they see fit. Comes back to what intent versus the letter of the word. So what, again, are you proposing as far as maintenance on Rain Garden 102?
Increased frequency of inspection and maintenance as needed. So instead of,
You know what it is currently? Is it annual?
it's annual. So it'd be a spring and fall inspection instead of just a fall inspection.
And do you agree that would help or mitigate?
Yes.
What's the board think? Steve,
I think, yes, I think it would be, Chris is right that we don't have treatment involved in town regulations, and maybe we should change that because while this information is very out of date, this is the right moment to raise it, I think. When I was reviewing the Regional Planning Commission's corridor study for 125, the brook in the vicinity was the only one that was listed as somewhat impaired in its water quality conditions. And that's like 15 years out of date. Things could have changed. But it would be good if we were paying more attention to this area of issues.
All right. Well, I would think that would be a discussion for another time. We're talking about regulations. We can't just walk off and impose regulations or ask for regulations with an application that's in process.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. A couple of other things. That was in your response. So in your list of answers to comments by CMA.
Which one?
And so they're all dated 12 October. So under site plan review comments. 17.
That's the one we got.
Yep.
All right. That was in a second. It is right here. 17.
Okay.
So just
Typo? We're talking about the typo?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. You're talking about the under drain. It says it's typically 4 to 6 feet. You got it installed approximately 2 feet. And so the recommendation was drop the underground pipe depth. And then you came back. I just basically said, you're going to keep it where it is.
Oh, I think so, because we moved it.
Yeah, so after that comment letter, Chris and I talked through all of these points. And we were sent this third letter, which came out Thursday, I think it was, Thursday, Friday. And everything from the second letter was addressed except for these few items. So the under drain, Chris agreed to lower it down to 4 feet.
So there was another letter.
No, no.
No, you should have all the letters.
All right, oh,
Because you keep referencing the latest, the latest.
October 27th is what you're talking.
The 28th. So it's the October 28th letter, which is the one I think we've been talking about initially, has only the remaining issues.
All right.
Everything else from the previous letter has been addressed and worked through.
Right, so there was only those remaining issues.
Correct.
Okay, I don't have any further questions.
I got softball. On this rendering here, you show the light fixtures there and one there. You have lights underneath the other, right?
Probably be T8s, so they're. Or, no, not T8s, I'm sorry. The LEDs, yeah, the pops, yeah. Mr. Chairman, we have a number of items. We have a lot line revision to create private study. We have the residential, non-residential site review. We have the 9.6.
So
You want to list those again, please? Yes, sir. Lot line revision, 2 properties. We have the 9.6 buffer impact, and then we have the residential and non-residential site review.
9.6 in the lot line. Saw you guys before we started. Back, I think like your first meeting or your second meeting, that stuff was all approved, and then you came in with your waivers. First meeting that I came back. But those other stuff, I thought there was something I saw, there was a letter sent out. That was okay, so I did put it on my thing. Okay, I thought I did.
I don't remember that happening.
It is, I found a notice that
when, let's say it was approved.
Oh, this is my newest one. Oh, I got the old one. I got the old one. I don't have the new one. I thought I did write it up.
That's not on my sheet either.
Yeah, I got one of yours. This is the one I just wrote up for this past meeting. You're right. This is, I'm missing. So this is the one I wrote up for you guys, because I did find that Marsha had sent a letter out that those were approved. That's why I put them in there.
All right. Oh, wait a minute.
Well, what we can do is call, that's for that was October 5th meeting.
October meeting, this project was continued.
What I kind of thought. I thought any actions we took were before that. Okay. Can we? So this is.
remember.
No, this is Meadowbrook.
Oh, that's why.
Okay.
I knew there was one I wrote up there.
Okay.
The other one was Meadowbrook.
Now agree with you, Chris.
So
We now agree.
it's not here.
Sorry.
These are,
Okay, that's what it is. I wrote up Meadowbrooks too. And they both got number 3 on them because of the way that thing was. And I put one
see,
in.
what
one.
has that done?
Okay, so I'd have an invalid approval. All right. So,
It was, that other one was the one voted on, not yours. I knew I
Say,
had
all
done
I
it.
show is
yes, so. Yes, I remember seeing the 9.6, I remember seeing lot line revision, although there was some discussion on lot line revision from you. Well, that's believable. You questioned the idea behind conducting a lot line revision versus a merger and then subdivision. Yes. But you still want to proceed with lot line? Yes, sir. All right. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll resume this.
I knew I wrote one up. This application.
See you. Not terrible. How are you? Okay, thanks for your help. No problem. Was Bill doing any news?
So,
Not really.
Does he do Nottingham or was that you?
No, he actually did that one.
Does he? Yeah.
Yeah. He does them once in a while.
So I got, did one on Route 4, Bill did that.
Yes.
And it was like a page long. I was like, Bill, that's like at the planning, like at the South Florida Planning Board, Bill. Not that he and I get along. He's very technical and, you know, questions a lot, and I have the answers, but, so I got this page review. And then, the second one I did in Nottingham last year on Mitchell Road, that one was a little page and a half. And then
It's chapter 8 of NFPA 1.
this wasn't reviewed by Bill. You couldn't, this, what, do you just like to wake up and read the plans?
Yeah, Nick and I in the
One
office.
is the straight up got one-on-one life safety.
They adopt 101 by 50.
Yes, well, it's state.
And then we bounce stuff off.
Not code,
You
but
know, he reviews everything that goes out. We were
Adopted.
I have a huge amount of respect for
See, the state adopts,
Talking messages.
oh, well, here this,
wisdom.
we have to
Step back
state.
and go.
So the state adopts the rules and they tell us what we have. A right to do.
Sometimes like younger guys like us,
Some just get come on and change into some things we can't.
get caught up in the details.
you get caught up in.
But we can't make things less stringent than the state code. You can make them more stringent. And there's a few things in the
Now,
IRS,
who's the traffic guy? You?
just the opposite.
That's actually Phil.
The maximum that
Oh,
you can.
Phil,
do,
the traffic
you
guy.
Can't, you
You
can
met
be
him?
more
Nope.
lenient.
He's good.
It's only like 2 or
Yep.
3 sections in
Yep.
it.
He's,
It gives you that.
I think 5 years old.
It's funny, you
Oh.
gotta know each one of them.
I don't have a traffic background.
Interesting. That's why.
Actually, Nick did most of the detailed work, and then he and I talked through the issues and got to fine tune to what you ended up seeing.
Oh, good.
And ran over it by Bill, and
Well, that does come up. And that's on NFPA 50.
and Bill likes you a lot.
Actually.
Oh, really?
He does, yeah.
Oh,
He thinks you, and I agree, you know, you put together a very complete pack, you know, well thought out. package.
oh, good.
It's a liaison to the fire chief because inside the building's mine anyway.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not typical,
58 outside isn't.
Really?
Oh,
not really.
but a violation, so
Some more so than
I
others,
don't fix it. I go, I don't have the authority.
especially for a project like this.
Official designation.
I try and view it,
Types of purposes
By the
so that now I can enforce some of the fire codes.
I didn't know that.
yeah, I'm not, so don't address me as PE because I haven't earned it.
Okay.
Doesn't
Oh,
regulate it.
Good to know.
I try and
Where the regulator is, not the tank. And then it
Mhm.
better be.
just kind of step back.
Anything that's considered source of ignition, so when it's a switch.
Should you prepare a plan
General,
so that
anything that can be a source
kind
of
of walk
ignition.
somebody through
Natural gas,
finish?
worry about going up. Propane gas.
Shocking.
Sense. So it can actually right underneath the window without having the 3 foot of separation. So it's anything equal to or below has to be 3 feet away.
I think too, you have a good understanding of the regs
Tell the fire department.
in the towns that you work at.
Yeah, yes. Rule 1, when we start a project, is the project manager is to sit down and and know those rules are allowed. Because there's standing at a planning board meeting, somebody cite something that you clearly just missed. It's a terrible feeling. Actually, first concept like I did on space subdivision. I wanted to spend $60,000 on space.
Do you guys have the
Supervisor.
Yeah, have the application for 9.6? Should be in the folder. And a lot line revision.
It should have been part of the original application.
Space subdivisions.
I don't have.
Cisterns is for the,
Oh,
they got a file.
I've never. 60.
if Ron's got one. Ron, can you pick up?
Oh, we'll reassess and come back.
Wow.
That was a humbling.
I bet it was.
They're not even allowed it alone. He almost had a chuckle in his voice. Because we were fighting about units, 10 units, 12 units, whatever.
Yeah, it was a moot point.
It was a moot point. And that was his point was, we don't even need to discuss this.
See, I don't know.
We're just checking. Point.
Did they ask for all of them?
Okay.
We didn't have that.
Staff,
Yeah,
Kids.
got it.
Thank you, Barbara.
And do we
you
have
need the
the,
plan?
no,
Lot line?
Ron's got it. I got page 21.
We do.
All right.
We have a group that's
That would fit 'em.
at least 2 or 3 developers.
Oh, well.
Yep.
So this should show.
A lot of work in New Hampshire, some work in Maine.
Chris,
Yes.
what sheet of the plans is lot line revision on?
It's early.
I know,
It's 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
9 right now.
It's 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I know. All right, so the 9.6 application that was submitted as part of the original application.
22 to answer your first question.
What's that?
Sheet 22 to answer your first question.
Okay. So the 9.6 application had to do with affecting 12,621 square feet of the buffer area.
Yes, sir.
And maybe you want to explain that?
Sure. So the major portion of that is the installation of 2 wells for the community system to ensure that they can get a truck out and back to rounds. That knob, that, high point needed to be cut down. So that area was cut down and the proposed disturbance within 50-foot buffer. As soon as the material is removed, it's seeded and it becomes a buffer. And then the smaller portion of that is at the front of the site where we need to grab a certain elevation, which is inside the buffer for the ground to work at the front of the site.
Right. And as I also remember correctly, you also have to do some fill across up that road going into.
Yes, yeah. So inherently when you cross through a buffer, through a wetland, you're crossing through the buffer also. And we have the 2 wetland crossings for the access to the well site. This was reviewed by the Conservation Commission and I believe
They didn't have an issue.
they had no issues.
Okay. So the I'm looking, you had laid out for us what the answers to the questions were from the 9-6.
Yes, there's a,
Have those?
I don't have them in front of,
Okay. The second one. Fine. I do remember that you submitted them because I did read them at the time. It's been some period of time since. Okay. You had a number. Has me here. This is a copy of your application. You made reference to see attached sheets.
For me, looking at the online document, see attached is below, an explanation, a text explanation is below see attached. It's a separate document from the original application. There's one for 9.6 specifically.
Right. And so I'm looking, you have it online there, Steve?
Correct.
All right. So maybe you can, how about if you fill us in on what the answers were to the various questions?
Okay, let's see.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just found it. Okay, so the first question has to do with proposed use keeping with the intent and purpose. A conditional use permit not needed. Oh, okay. I think I just found it in here too. All right, and it says that not needed to allow the PUD within the town center. A variance was granted for the proposed density. Question 2, after review of all reasonable alternatives, it's determined to be infeasible to place the proposed structure or use outside the buffer zone. He talks about the 3 areas as you just discussed. The first one being for the gravel wetlands, which is part of an existing wetlands at the shared boundary line. Then there was no feasible way to extend community way into lot 1.1 without disturbing the buffer. Gravel wetland, and the final is the well access road. Given the topography and shape of the lot, the well had to be placed in the upland area near the northeast corner. There was really no other feasible alternative to locating. The proposed setback, the proposed use is setback as far as possible while still achieving the design. The board discussed that, looking at the plans previously. Appropriate erosion control measures must be in place prior to and during construction. An intensive erosion and sediment control plan is included in the submittal. It is included in the plans, including the design specifically is the use of double perimeter control and orange construction, fence for construction within the buffer. Number 5, any disturbance to the surrounding buffer zone must be repaired and restored. All disturbed areas will receive loam and conservation mixed seed after construction is complete. Additionally, plantings are proposed along the buffer areas to enhance the remaining buffer. We've also reviewed that at the plans. And all available mitigation measures to address change in water quality along with design and construction methods to minimize the board, to satisfy the board. And it says an in-depth drainage analysis has been conducted through use of rain gardens, gravel wetlands. The peak rate has been reduced to offsite final reaches and are compliant. So as part of our discussions of the plans and everything, we've already, I think we've addressed all of those issues, but that states it. So does anybody have any further discussion on the 9.6? Not hearing any, then would someone like to make a motion to approve 9.6 application for special permit? All right, I make a motion to approve the 9.6 application associated with application 235-1.1, 13-TC-21-SR. Oh, yeah. Well, this is simply 9.6. There's no way.
It's a special permit.
Special permit. Second. All right, motion made by Jeff Rand and seconded by Ron Allard to approve 9.6 special permit. Roll call vote. Donna Susan,
Suchi, aye.
Andrew Menikis,
Andy, am I?
Ron Allard, Steve Dunn,
Diamond Eye.
and Bran aye. So it is unanimous. The 9.6 is approved. The lot line division, which is on 21 and 22. All right, does anybody have any questions about that? Lot line division. Any questions? Steve Dyer?
No.
Okay. All right. Hearing none. It's your turn.
Motion we approve the outline revision request on application 235-1. And -TC-21.
I second. Oh, second. So motion made by Ron Allard and seconded by Jeff Rand to approve the lot line revision associated with this application. Roll call vote. Steve Diamond,
Diamond Eye.
Donna Masucci,
Suchi, aye.
Andy, am I?
Fran, aye. All right, it's unanimous. Lot line revision is approved. Thank you. What's next? I'd like an approval site review. If I can get it. All right.
Draft on that.
We don't have a draft.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, we do. All right. All right. So
Consistent with how the past ones were.
all right. One thing I want to check is what we discussed earlier.
Yeah, that's
Conditions precedent. All right. So the board has the draft notice of decision prior to reading it. I'll note that a conditions precedents, if you look at our regulations, we can do a conditional approval, but if there are conditions precedent, those are things that are required to be completed before we sign off on the plans, which they need us to sign so they can go out and do the work. One of the things that, as you all know, I'm working on the regulations. One thing I noted in going back through some of our notices of decisions is that we have set some condition precedents that can only be completed if work is completed, which can't start if we haven't signed the plans. So that doesn't work. So
Most communities have precedent conditions and subsequent conditions.
right, right. And we, unfortunately, I've been doing a deep dive on state statutes as well as our process on conditional approvals and have noted this as a problem. For instance, and the reason I'm bringing this up is under condition precedents, it says the applicant's engineer shall certify in writing all improvements have been constructed as approved.
Hard to do.
That's hard to do when you haven't had a set of plans that allow you to start work. So
Change that to you.
conditions. So, yeah, general and subsequent conditions. So if the board will look at the condition precedents and see if there are any, certainly 4D will have to move under conditions. Are there any others here? So again, school impact fee will be assessed at the time of the building permit and paid prior to the issuance of the certificate. How does that an appropriate conditions precedent?
The way it's worded, it's
Basically,
implicated that it's subsequent already.
and that was in this, it was drafted out before I started, so I just left it.
Okay, so would it be appropriate to move that to general and subsequent conditions? Okay. We reserve the right to get smarter. Speak for yourself. Final landscape design is part of this approval. Just copy, should be an issue. Add the following plan notes, add DES alteration, permit, all the different permit numbers.
Precedent.
Okay, so that's not an issue. And we're gonna have to add, waiver, 9.6 permit, doesn't that need to be?
You're gonna say that that was one of them that was approved along with the lot line. I just,
The lot line would, I would think would go in here, but the 9.6 should go on the plan, should it not?
yeah, the 9.6 granted should go on the plan.
All right, so,
Plan, no. The lot line would have.
yeah, lot line, that's something separate. That doesn't, that was approved, right? That does. It was approved. So there has to be a notice of decision on the lot line.
Correct. Yeah.
Has it been approved?
They just.
Yes, we just approved it.
I didn't write one. I assumed it was done. They did the other one. She did.
It said fire.
So, but this specifically
So we'll
is,
do a separate one.
yes, I think we need to do a separate one. This is specific to the application. I'm sorry, guys, we're,
Oh, no, take your time.
yeah, I'll bet, yeah. Verge of approval, yeah.
I'm at the precipice.
Yeah. Okay. So where would we go with the 9.6? Would that be, how about E? Add the following plan notes, add the 9.6 permit? Approval of the 9.6?
9.6 was granted and then today's date.
All right, any other changes that we need to make to this, or me reading?
What about the fall, winter thing, fall, spring thing?
Fall, spring.
Oh,
Add a note for the maintenance of the.
Yeah, so that could be a condition, right? To revise, is it Rain Garden 102?
in the operations and maintenance. I would point out there's one item that needs to be addressed as part of the CMA comments. The typo.
Oh, okay. All right, so we're going to add. Okay. Strike that. Ron just pointed out number 4, the applicant's engineer shall certify in writing the improvements have been constructed as approved prior to issuance. Yeah, that should be. subsequent general. What was the note? It was about the.
Yeah, address comment 17 on the CMA letter from 28.
Address comment 17. CMA letter dated.
28.
All right. And what was one other thing?
Operations and maintenance.
What's that?
The operations and maintenance.
Yeah, operations. and maintenance. So, maintenance. Operations and maintenance. Rain garden. It's rain garden 102. All right. I think we got it. Okay, I'm going to read the draft notice of decision as amended. And this will be for a conditional approval. All of the precedent conditions below must be met by the applicant at the expense of the applicant prior to the plans being certified by the planning board. Certification plans is required prior to commencement of any site work or recording of any plans. Once these precedent conditions are met, the plans are certified. Approval is considered final. All right. Please note, okay, board, we gotta have a discussion. This is a, what's that? This is a site review, right? Not a subdivision?
Right.
All right. So this says if all precedent conditions are not met within 6 calendar months to the day, then board's approval will be considered to have lapsed. Under site review regulations, there is no time limit specified. There is in the subdivision. It's reasonable to set a date, but as we recently experienced having to extend things 6 months, given that there's, oh, yeah. Well, I know, we were in a hurry. I thank you very much. Right.
Thank you.
All right, prior to reading this, I will,
I'm going to use the bathroom.
okay, go ahead. We're going to open this up for public comment. So if there's anybody online that, it's what, *6 to unmute?
Yes, if you can raise your hand, you can enter a comment in the chat feature. If you're on a phone, you can press *6 to unmute yourself. Speak up, let the chair know you'd like to address the board.
Yes. So I apologize that we got deep into this. So if anybody here would like to make a comment, please come up, state your name and address.
I don't see anything on this end, Mr. Chair.
As being an applicant, 6 months. The state took a year and a half. All they do is take
Yes, we understand that. Once I close, I will respond to that, which is, yes, we recognize that, and we are having discussions. That's why I just did that within the board as to whether that's appropriate. What's the appropriate time? And the fact that we have a disconnect between subdivision regulations, site review regulations, that we didn't realize we're doing a full re-review of regulations to test things like this. So it's a valid comment. We recognize it. And we recognize we're wasting your time and ours. Trying to respond. We're trying to respond. All right. Does anybody, again, one more time, anybody online that wishes to make a comment? All right. Hearing no comments, public hearings closed. All right. So So does the board, Steve, do you agree that we can go with 12 calendar months at this point because there is no set time period within the site review regulation?
Seems reasonable.
Okay. All right, so please note if all pressing conditions aren't met within 12 calendar months to the day, the board's approval will be considered to have lapsed unless mutually extension granted by the board. Add the following condition precedent, add the following plan notes. The following waivers were approved on September 7th, 2021. 12.7 Table 2 Intersection Design Standards, Section 12.2.1 Figure 4A, Section 12.2.1 Figure 4C, Section 12.3.2 Parent 5 Curbing and Driveway Design. Also, final landscape design is part of this approval. Need to revise the plan notes to add the New Hampshire DES alteration terrain permit, the DES subsurface bureau CA number, water supply permit number, New Hampshire DOT driveway permit number, add the 9.6 special permit was approved on November 2nd, 2020. You need to revise the maintenance, the operations and maintenance manual for Rain Garden 102. And any outstanding fees shall be paid to the town. Prior to obtaining board signature, the applicant shall submit 3 complete paper print plan sets and supporting documents as required in Article 3 with a letter explaining how the applicant addressed the conditions of approval. This shall include the final and complete reports for all items submitted during the review for the town of Barrington file. The chairman shall endorse 3 copies of the approved plans, meeting the conditions of approval upon receipt of surety to cover stabilization of the site. All that we got a surety.
Take that right out of it.
Yep.
In the past, the town not interested in going in on a
Okay, we're not
site.
repeating that. Okay, so strike that. The town shall retain, assign, and approve producible 11 by 17 in PDF format with supporting documents for town records. So those are conditions precedent. General and subsequent conditions where no active or substantial work required on this approval is commenced upon the site within 2 years from the date of the plan is signed. This approval shall expire and an extension not to exceed 1 year may be granted by majority vote of the board, so long as it is applied for at least 30 days prior to the expiration date. The board may grant only one such extension for any proposed plan. All of the plans must be submitted to town to ensure compliance with these and other town ordinances. Active and substantial work is defined in this section as being the expenditure of at least 25% of the infrastructure improvements required under this approval. Infrastructure shall mean in this instance the construction of roads, storm drains, and improvements indicated on the site plan. We also, in that section, that the school impact fee will be assessed at the time of the building permit by the
I
builder.
don't know why that's on there.
Okay? Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, they're building,
That's building, that's not, it's not part of,
this project builds residential
but
units.
we've never put it on there. But you can have it on there if you want it.
You're gonna. Yeah. School impact fee will be assessed at the time of the building permit by the building inspector and paid prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. The applicant's engineer shall certify in writing all improvements have been constructed as approved. And the applicant's engineer shall certify in writing the improvements have been constructed as approved prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So,
Modification, correction, whatever. Under the O&M manual modification, like say specifically for spring and fall inspection. We didn't have enough time.
all right, so if we revise that to revise operations and maintenance manual, Rain Garden 102, to include biannual, biannual, maybe two, biannual is semi-annual. We can just say semi-annual. Include semi-annual. All right. That satisfy everybody's concerns? All right. Vote. All right, somebody make a motion.
The motion to accept the draft application for applicant number 235-1 13-3C.
I second. So motion made by Ron Allard, seconded by Jeff Brand to approve the application. Roll call vote. On the Suchi.
Suchi, aye.
Okay.
Andy, am I?
Howard, aye.
Brand, aye. Diamond.
Diamond eye.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for all your time this evening.
Well, we appreciate your,
Question on this,
yes.
unless you want to do it 100 pages, can you guys vote just to stamp the?
You're the one that gets to sign it.
Unless you want to do
chaired this meeting.
109 pages 5 times.
So you're saying our current requirement is we have to sign every page?
Well, no, that's what we can do, but 109
Common practice.
times 5, I
What's that?
have to.
It's been the practice because
Yes.
she's had applicants slip pages in and out with different revision dates.
All right, so you're saying you want to use a stamp on, except the
Decide
cover
what
page?
pages. He's got all the revision dates, so that should cover him.
Do we need to make a motion to vote on that?
I don't care if you do or not, I'm just saying, you want to sign 109
No.
pages.
I do not.
And it would be clean for the board to authorize you to sign it without having to sign every page.
Yeah.
Where it's been.
All right.
Step.
So we sign the cover sheet and stamp subsequent sheets? Is that what you're saying?
None of this gets, do you have to record any of this?
No, it's a site.
The lot line revision, that's separate.
Okay, just, so the lot line and cover and don't want to, none of that. I don't think it's necessary, is what I'm saying. You decide what you want to stamp.
This has happened.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't care either way, but you, probably proper to do the cover of the plan set and then the actual site plan itself. That's kind of the controlling document. And then just stamp a date and the lot, obviously the lot line revision, because I can't get recorded about it.
All right.
Yeah. I make a motion to sign the cover sheet,
Site plan.
site plan, and lot line revision.
I second. Okay, we have a motion.
Okay.
Second. You want to repeat? No, I've already seconded.
All right.
Motion by Ron out. So go ahead and repeat your motion.
We're gonna sign the cover sheet, the site plan, and the lot line revision sheet.
For application 235-1.1. All right, so that's the motion. Roll call, Steve Dime,
Diamond eye.
Brand, aye. Allard,
Andy, am I?
Suchi, aye.
Suchi, aye. All right, it's unanimous. We just passed the motion that said we're gonna do the site plan, cover sheet, lot line pages over.
Right.
All right,
You need every page?
Not tonight.
Well, no, you gotta get it all done first.
all right, can we discuss that? We're running out of time.
Cool.
Got like
Have a good night.
Josh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Like I said, I've talked to people. I think that the board's very pleased with the work CMA did on this.
Good.
particular.
Thank you for letting me know.
Did a good job. Yeah.
You got a short drive home.
It's nice.
All right, so on to We're on to Meadowbrook, and the quicker you can make it, the happier we will be, and the people behind.
You ready for me, Mr. Chair?
Acting
Chair.
I'm ready. We're past ready.
Good evening. My name is Barry Guy. I'm with Jones and Beach Engineers for the applicant. This is the 11 conservation subdivision that we've been in front of you a couple times on. At our last meeting, we went through quite a bit of the project, including agreed to the yield plan, voted on the section 9.6 special permit. We agreed to modify some of the lots based upon getting of the wetland area to the open space to protect it. We agreed that intersection should go to a three-way stop control and the design of the culvert at the road entrance to be completed. We also took a site walk to view the vegetation or screening adjacent to the east portion of the property. That happened on Friday, so we were unable to get revised plans to you within a week, waiting on the site walk to make sure we didn't have to make any changes. I did make the changes we discussed, but I'm almost afraid to show you guys after.
Gun shy.
Go ahead.
Little gun
You
shot.
can show us.
So quickly, so that
We got for the next one.
the other item we discussed was have CMA review the drainage, which they haven't completed the drainage review yet. So we'll be asking for a continuance to allow them to review the drainage. So if you can see on your screen, and I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the rear of 7, 8, and 9 have been revised to provide that relocate some of the wetland into the open space to protect it better. I do show four-way stop at the intersection. Get to that sheet. There's the four-way stop. Sorry, you're freeway. I was adding a look there.
Yeah.
We can do that by ourselves.
And the add stop ahead signs I think will be important at that intersection as well. We do add the stop signs. So those are the changes that I've made that I'd be happy to talk to them, talk to the board about those tonight. Major thing that we want to discuss was the what we believe is the lack of a need for additional vegetation in the buffer or in the external setback.
Okay. Before we do that, because we don't have the minutes out yet, the sidewalk just occurred, that we did the sidewalk. John Allen and I were there along with Jamie Jamieson and Steve Diamond. We heard comments previously that, in fact, there was this clear. It turns out that they did clear a portion of the boundary of the lot and out behind their house. They did leave hardwoods, hemlocks. They took out basically the pond. Visually, looking at the houses that are along the lot line, there was one particular individual that represented that he could see into the person's living room. We verified that, in fact, we cannot see that there was, but you can see that the trees, the density has been reduced. It is possible to see from one property to the other, although other people, other properties seemed like they had more of a visual person does. So after walking it and looking at it, we asked the question, Mr. Geyer, and said, nope, we don't have any intention now of doing anything with a buffer. We did talk about relocating some hemlocks into the buffer when they're clearing the lots, build the homes. But that's kind of the summary of where how the site walk went. So, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with that. I think there was some evergreen that was kind of low, we could cover. to existing, rather than take them out, just relocate them. That was our.
Steve Dyer? You were on the site.
Yes. So thinking back to the abutters comments and comments I hear from other neighbors around. So quite often everyone makes assumptions. I didn't personally. I asked what the zoning was before I moved here, but you have so many other things to think about that often people don't make assumptions about. Often folks make assumptions that currently undeveloped land is going to remain that way, which of course is not correct. But when people move to Barrington, especially, one of the main reasons I think they do so is to live in the woods. And so to the extent we possibly can, I think it'd be great to have a good degree of visual buffering so that everyone in this community and external to this community elsewhere on Meadowbrook Lane feels like they're in the woods. The trees that remain in the buffer area were crowded by the trees that have been removed, so their buffering functionality was somewhat degraded. And while I appreciate that the expense of an exhaustive, quick, and perfect buffering approach that we might have in a commercial area would be excessive, it seems reasonable to me, since large-sized excavators are likely to be on site anyway, to at least make an attempt to move some 1 to 3 inch caliper hemlocks that are already on site into the buffer zone, such that within 5 or 10 years they would probably provide 75% coverage to 12 feet, something like that, especially if they had some degree of soil amendment given the sandiness of the conditions. So that's what I personally consider reasonable.
I have to say that, yeah, there was much more buffering than I expected. I'm kind of surprised that the person that made public comment before has more visual screening than actually there's that other, I think it's a blue house that's up there. And when you start clearing things out, put the road in, then I'm a little more concerned, even though they have not complained or given us comment. You know, visual buffering, because the swampy area, the wetland area is pretty non-existent in that. So I agree that we don't need some exhaustive vegetative buffer there like we do for a commercial property, but you know, a line of spaced hemlock or something else, just a line along there that can fill in, not anything extensive, doesn't require even a big landscape plan. It would be, oh, we're going to plant X species of trees every few feet on the back of that buffer area. That's what I would like to see.
I think the applicant would be amenable to, as what Mr. Allard indicated, was, you know, picking up some of the ones that are currently there and to move them. I think some of them were pretty close to the buffer. We weren't positive if they were actually in the buffer or not, but
Yeah, but that's a hit or miss kind of thing, depending on what they need to do. That's the only problem with that. And so they say we got to move 6 trees when you need 20. That's not so good. I mean, there ought to be a plan and say, we'll use trees that are on site and it will supplement those with others as needed. That's kind of my vision for that.
we can look at that. I will say that the kind of trees that if we have to purchase them, they're not inexpensive to get the height that, and I think there is and I think everybody that walked it saw that there was a pretty good buffer out there currently. The area that is between where the lot lines were staked, the back of the lots and the property line will not be disturbed. So that will grow up and become a visual barrier. So I don't want to get excessive. We understand what you guys are looking for, I think, but the purchase of them, I think we can move some of them that are already on site that would be disturbed eventually and locate them along the buffer and serve the purpose. We're not going to do 100-foot vegetated, fully vegetated buffer.
That's not where we're at.
I agree.
We're saying, we're just looking for something that can.
Right.
Along the border,
And I think we can
We're talking
provide that.
a row of trees, not rows of trees and shrubs, none of that. Just something that can fill in the short term, because it's gonna take a while for that clear space, which.
That stuff grows pretty fast, but yes.
Well, I mean, the logging that was done took out the pine trees, so basically the evergreens came out and the deciduous stayed in.
Right.
Put some evergreens back, and I think in all season, I think that's what we're looking
Okay. I think we can look at that and show you something next time.
So other than that, do you have anything else?
No, unless
This is
you
more-
guys have any.
Sorry,
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, this is more for the board than for the applicant. So from doing the site walk, it occurred to me that Meadowbrook Road itself, because of a combination of slope and fairly narrow radius turns, the sight lines weren't all that great. I wonder at what point of development of Meadowbrook Road changes to the design of the road itself would be warranted. The speed limit is 20 miles per hour, and to some extent, a very slow speed limit encourages multi-modes of transportation, and people using those modes to feel safer. But I wonder if anyone has comments on what level of development would warrant changes to this road.
I don't know, Steve, but we have one board member that needs to leave in 15 minutes, and I need to move this along. I think that's something for us to think about. We can discuss when they come back after the meeting.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else? All right. Continuance, is that correct?
Correct, until the next.
Until the next meeting?
Yes.
December. Yeah, no, the next is the meeting, but the first public hearing meeting will be December 7th, correct? All right, I make a motion to continue. What's the application number? Jeff. Oh. You're just asking for.
I'm sorry.
All right.
That's that
All right.
parts of the case.
All right, I'll open this up for public comment. Anybody online, *6 to unmute if you're on. You can raise your hand if you're on a computer. All right. Yeah, Barbara Locke. I believe, yes,
Yes.
I'm sorry, we got carried away here, and we do know, we saw you at the site walk, and you said you wanted to make comments here. She gave it, yes, she had a presentation. You have those slides.
Oh, actually,
Okay, put that up on the screen.
I did. I didn't review it though.
Also, it's about.
Ready? Ready? All right. Go ahead. And then what, Barbara Locke, and are you there?
yes, I am.
And your address, please?
228 Stepping Stones Road, Barrington.
Okay, so would, go ahead and proceed with your comment?
Well, I tried to make it clear in the slides, showing the history beginning in 1953 of that area, and that the areas that I marked, the meadow and so forth, were changed drastically by a grandfathered sand pit that was allowed to operate without posting any bonds or any plans for restoring the land. And it basically resulted in the area being flooded that's shown in the photographs there. I would like to make sure that because beaver come and go on Caldwell Brook, and a good section of that is on the land that is owned by the Sierras right now, that can never be dammed, because the pit was sold to a developer and houses were allowed to be built there. And the water from that area continues to drain over across 2 Mile Road into the area that includes my property. And when beaver build their dams on Caldwell Brook, that backs the water up even further onto my land. And I would like some assurance from the developer, or stipulation in the drainage plan perhaps, that any beaver activity or man-made ideas to make a pond out there could never take place, because that just increases the water on my property.
Okay.
Last slide hasn't asked. Last slide. So, last paragraph. Stop it, beavers, is that?
I don't,
I can do it personally, but as a board, I don't.
as a board, I don't think we have any control over the beavers. I understand the concern, which is Caldwell Brook that runs across the property. We didn't see that. That wet area between the edge of the property and that blue house that's set up
No, it's behind the house, the existing house.
behind. Okay. So there are no plans to develop that area. That's part of the open space, correct?
Correct. There are no plans to develop.
If you back up some slides, I marked where the Sierra's land is, and you can see the brook going through.
All right.
And you do, we do have CMA that'll be reviewing all the drainage for it as well.
Okay. Yeah, but as I recall on the site plan, you have no.
Oh, no, we can't do that.
That's part of the open space back there.
Correct.
I did, okay, now I kind
Right.
of remember where that is. So I guess,
I think the easy part, the first part of the question.
right, Ms. Locke,
Second part.
just so you know, the current plans that we've seen for the development does not involve that area along Caldwell Brook, that's kept as an open area. And in fact, specifically, there's been discussions between the applicant and the board on maximizing protection of the wetland areas, which would include that brook. So as far as development goes, there's no, the plans that we currently have show no development along that brook or disturbing the brook in any way.
I understand that, but the homeowners association would be responsible for maintaining drainage and so forth from the development into the wetlands or the brook or Meadowbrook Road. And that could also involve beaver coming back into Caldwell Brook and building another dam. So somebody would be responsible for having, checking on that and making sure that that does not occur.
Well, so the developer has to submit their plans. We send that whole drainage plan out for a third-party review, and they will have to consider all types of events that could negatively affect that particular drainage system and account for it. So we hear your comment and we'll take it down. Is there anything else?
No, thank you very much for showing the slides, and if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer if anything isn't clear.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Your time and effort and a great presentation.
Yeah, very nice. Is there anybody else that'd like to make public comment?
I don't see anything virtually, Mr. Chair.
All right, hearing none, I close the public hearing. So do we hear a motion to continue this case until December 7th?
Make a motion, we continue 27-2 and 3, 273-49-PR-21 till December 7th.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Allard and second by Mr. Brand. Roll call vote.
Andy, M.I.
Brand, aye.
Diamond Eye.
All right, unanimous.
Thank you all very much.
December 7th. Thank you very much for your patience.
Design review.
All right, so next on the docket is we actually have two requests for design reviews. Now, I will tell you that Donna Masucci has agreed she could stay another until 9:30. So I think we try to get through that in half an hour. I mean, obviously, I would ask the board members,
Which one?
you have comments or questions, you frame them.
Which files are on open? Just the PDFs?
Just
For all
the,
of them?
regular site plan for now.
This one?
Okay, thank you. And as you know, I have defended the right of the public to participate in this hearing.
Oh, I didn't think you did it on purpose.
It's just, I'm conscious that people sitting out here and
I did.
we're losing a board member.
I did do the staff recommendation and open the meeting, close the meeting stuff and did it. We worked.
Oh, well, okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, thank you, I appreciate it. These are unusual circumstances we're operating under here tonight. All right, so we have here, the first one is an application for a multi-use site on Route 125 Kalo Highway. Map 223, lot 26-C2. This was one of the lots that were generated as a result of the overall development. Rigid Green Hill. Yes, got it. All right, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Scott Cole from Beals Associates. I also have with me, Mr. O'Neill of Stone Arc Development, and I have Joseph Falzone, who's the actual landowner, the development behind it, and including the
So
company.
you're gonna do lot 4 first?
Yes.
Okay. We had them in the opposite order. Agenda, no problem.
I believe Stone Arc was the first one.
What's that?
I believe Stone Arc Development was the first of the two design review.
Stone Arc was first, yes.
So that's what we're doing here. I'll try to be brief. This is kind of a show and tell, being a design review. Our client wanted to come in and show the board what their thoughts are for commercial development. As you said, this is commercial lot derived from the previous development. To orient everyone, everybody knows where the new town hall is going. To the left of that, a primary access road going into the subdivision. And on the left of that, is the first commercial lot.
All right, so we are back on Stone.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Let me tell you one comment before you get rolling here. So look at the location map up in the left-hand corner. And if you go look at the one for commercial lot 4, they're the same location map. So this initially threw me because, is this correct?
I apologize, it probably should be moved. Being design review, I don't get.
Yep.
Done a lot.
I'm just letting you know, the location map is wrong. So
Those are corrected.
it threw me off.
So as Mr. Chairman said, for a multi-use building, the proposal would be for 8 commercial units on the bottom floor, and then 8 residential units on the second and third floor. The actual overall dimensions of the building itself would be 40 feet by 92 feet long, 192 feet long. The units themselves would be 24 feet by 40 feet. Now, what we are proposing here is a multi-use building. So the bottom will have the commercial units to a depth of, I believe, 18 feet. And then behind that would be 22 feet depth for garage space, either to be used by the clientele of the commercial units and or residential upstairs. As you can see, we've provided adequate circulation around the building. We've already gotten preliminary review back from the fire department on that. We have provided adequate parking for the building by the town's calculations. Please excuse the ones that were not for this application. I have redone those numbers. There would be roughly 3,456 square feet of commercial office space. That by 300 actually spaces for those units out, 20 spaces. The residential out back, we are also providing an interior of 2 spaces and 2 exterior for a total for them. Proposed counts for parking stalls would be required for the entirety of 28. We are actually proposing 52. As you can see, now this is part of the original design for the subdivision out back. So we do have some existing, not currently built, but proposed drainage systems in front of that. We will have a separate detention pond to the left, labeled there, proposed drainage area. This will be serviced by both private septic area, which is with the hatched rectangular area, and proposed private well. Again, so we have drive this concept. We want to get the opinion by the board. I know architectural has been somewhat of an issue in the past with the board. We real quickly would like to just show you, we have a schematic of the building, get your opinion on that and the layout design. Back.
Is it?
Oh, no, sorry. So right here, Sonark Development has actually, I believe, built a similar building. They've done this in a couple of municipalities, including Dover. As you can see, the bottoms would be the commercial units. They would all have their own parking stalls and access with the windows. And above, they would have the different roof lines and then the residential units above that. So this is something we want to get in front of the board. We know this could be a touchy topic with you in recent projects. I think it's an aesthetic. We understand there's a group between 125. Majority of that on this particular lot is assumed by wetland buffer and existing drainage for the subdivision behind it. So with that said, I'll put up to any questions or comments from the board.
So members of the board have comments, thoughts?
Just a real quick question on the show truck go around, just shows traffic flow. There's no loading dock or anything like that.
No, no, not on this one.
So how are the business, you said there's going to be parking in the, you're proposing parking in the rear?
Yep, the proposal right now would be for, the parking would be spaces with the above residential units, for the rear, and all of the front commercial parking would be out front.
So the residential access in the rear as well?
Correct, yep.
So how are you going to, businesses that would be there, you show trucks going around there, how are they going to be supplied if the residents own the space behind the businesses?
Well, typically the deliveries would be during non-functional hours as far as the commercial units. And we have designed this so that there would be no interference with any vehicles that are actually parked there if it's during non-operational.
Well, if I understand you correctly, you're going to kind of split the building from end to end on the lower floor, garages on the back.
Yes.
It's on the front. So physically, I mean, typically you see some kind of store and then they have a back door and they get deliveries through the back door. They aren't trying to load supplies in through the front door. How does that kind of?
Yep.
Excuse me, I'm John
John
O'Neill.
O'Neill.
Okay.
And I've got my sons with me as well, and we have a family business. It's, what it's done is we've done a lot of real estate holdings for rental and also for construction. So we've done this concept in Dover, and our plan is to make the bottom level our office. We have 12 employees now. We have our own staff. We have our own rendering company and design and management. So the whole bottom floor is going to be stone art. We're moving out of Dover. We have a location in Dover, one in Portsmouth. This will be our location. So it's what we do, and it fits our purpose. We're just an office with a bunch of computers to be.
Okay. All right. So these are going to be your offices.
They're mine.
So these aren't spaces. It's 8 commercial units.
Well, it depends, and we may break them up. Everybody will have their own individual space, but we think we'll start with 4. We can do some storage within. I'm not sure. Ultimately, that.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I guess the impression was that when you say commercial, these would be retail.
It's office as well, I'd say.
All right.
And you say 8 residential spots and we get 16 in the back?
Yes,
16 spaces in the back?
and 16 internal as well,
Sure.
parking spaces. Is that what you're talking about?
Talking about parking spaces.
Yep, and then there'll be garage doors in the rear of the building for the internal spaces.
So they could be either rented to the people that live upstairs, or they could be commercial use.
All right. Well, now you bring that up. If you're going to be renting garage space for commercial use, because we went through this with a proposal they wanted to do on the other side of 125, we have concerns about people renting a garage and ending up living in there. So.
Well, the life safety that it gets involved, these will all be sprinkled, and there's a tremendous buffer that takes place, having construction between the bottom level of office and then residential. So it's very extreme what we have to do to make that fire safe and separate that different uses. It's really extreme. Confirm that it's a very use and it's isolated and fire safe.
I guess what I'm saying is we'd be interested in what restrictions would be placed on what activities are going to be allowed in those garage spaces where they are tied to a commercial.
Yeah, we're pretty hard markers, and we have 200 units now that we rent, and we're very hard markers in who we rent to be quite frank, so we sell real estate, we rent real estate and do an intensive review to make sure it doesn't hurt anybody else.
Okay.
Can I comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the past, when they've had multiple units that are going to be commercial use, the applicant has specified what those uses could possibly be. So if you could come up with whether it's 10 or 20 or 30 possible uses, and if it complies with them, as the tenants change, you wouldn't have to come back to site review. So it makes everything all clean instead of just saying, I'm going to have office space, then someone wants to come in and use it for something else and you're coming back in front of the board. So I was just trying to give you up front, they can approve multiple uses based on, as long as the parking all works for the most intensive use, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay, you mentioned, well, some things that I just wanted to know, that I wanted to bring that up because tenant uses, you know, the cistern, you share, there is a cistern that's shown up here. I think it's moved from one side of the road to the other from the original plan, but there's the cistern that's up there at the corner by Town Hall. Now, the fire chief made comment about having, I think for this one, the 30,000 gallon cistern within 1,000 drivable feet. And I don't know if that cistern, certainly it's right across the road. I don't know if the capacity, I don't recall, do you?
20.
It's 20? It is 30,000.
30,000 gallons.
Oh, okay. All right.
And who's building that? The town hall? You know, who's doing that?
We're gonna be building those.
Yeah, you're gonna be doing the road.
Buying the property.
Yeah.
You know, so we're doing.
So that one would seem to meet the requirement. Question will come in on the next lot on C4, whether you've got the distance there, whether you need to put additional cistern in to do that. Of course, the fire chiefs mentioned 20-foot drive around access, unimpeded by parking spaces. Fire department access to all areas around the building in 100 feet, 150 feet or less. The other one. Speaking of architecture, so I have to say, looking at this, it's a good first effort, but it looks a little mundane.
Yeah, we can.
You know, if you look at what was, you know, some of the things they've done, like, you know, we have the design of the town hall, and then there's this one. This is the Drew Point multi-use development. One of the things that we've been emphasizing is that you just got a flat front along the building is, you know, staggering units such that we get a little bit of depth there. It's not just one long flat facade.
Mhm.
So, you know,
And obviously, you're interested in the residential side as well.
well, right, but the front side, it's in particular, the front side,
The backside is the residential.
right, is the residential area. I mean, both, but we're looking for something with,
Put some lipstick on it. You want it to look.
yes, I do.
We don't have a problem doing that. This is the first swing, so we just.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why you're here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to give you some input.
For sure.
I mean, we went through this on this particular development. There was a back and forth between the board and the developer before, you know, we got to this. So they started out kind of like that. They ended up like this. So that's kind of what we're looking for. We're looking for some character there. That's mine. But okay. Let's see, architecture we discussed. One of the things that also came up because of the multi-use, although I don't have as big a concern based on what I'm hearing from you, is they were actually in the particular building I just showed you, they're going to be, the commercial space will be rented out. There will be different businesses in there. And it was the calculations for the sewer loading were done, I don't know how to phrase this, but to make it understandable, less conservatively than we thought they should. In, you know, they were kind of lowballing the amount of effluent to base the calculations for the sewage treatment. Said, yeah, but wonder if you put in a coffee shop or, you know, you put in a hair salon. It's like,
We know you're moving in, but
The future.
it can change.
Although I got a couple of young guys behind me, so they'll be here for quite a bit. Taxes.
We love hearing you come from Portsmouth to Dover to Barrington.
Yep. So I think don't lowball the, whatever you use for defaults for figuring out what the commercial, the lower floor sewage rates are.
It'll be based on whatever uses they say they'd like to have in there, that you guys. will-
Right. But yeah, I mean, you don't know what the future is. You want to leave yourself over. The last thing you want to do is build this and then you go to rent it out and they go, oh, no, I'm sorry. The septic system can't. Which happened in Lee at a development.
I know it. No, we take that very seriously, and we have a lot of rentals, and trust me, the people pay their own water and sewer and septic, so we're very strict, and we educate them as to how they have to maintain it and take care of things.
Yeah. We just want to make sure you have sufficient capacity. That, again, back in this project, they went back and looked at it and go, yeah, okay. They upped the flow from some of the businesses, and everything came out fine, but it just ensures there'll be sufficient capacity, regardless of who the antenna.
Flexibility for your asset in the future.
Yep, one of the things we can certainly do when we look at that, when we're on the calcs, if we don't think it's enough or sufficient, we can make a reservation area that can only be used for future septic if the need comes. Certain use.
So if I understand this correctly, you got this new impervious surface that you're putting in here. You're going to have your own drainage area such that it doesn't impact the drainage system. An infiltration system that already exists has been approved as part of the bigger subdivision.
Yeah, and part of this, so everybody understands, these commercial lots here, whether they meet the disturbance or not, it was a requirement from AOT. They will go for an AOT permit individually. That was one of their requests, because these were already pre-designed and meant for actual residential subdivision.
Well, you probably heard the discussion, Drew Pond, where they then wanted to tie into what was done at Christmas Dove 3 years ago, and now, it's an issue. So learning from that experience.
Yes.
Yeah, if you try to start flowing from this development over into this rain garden or detention pond that already exists, then we're going to have a lot of questions.
Yep.
But you're saying it's going to be separate.
Yep, so this one currently is septic. We can go into that further on the next application in a moment.
All right, just, a couple of things just to be aware is just because they're a little bit of a pain is, remember, there's illumination requirements for the site plan.
Yep, we understand that.
Those include, you do the renderings of the building showing where the lighting is going to illuminate the building on the renderings, and
We like that
I think I mentioned this to you before about, we currently have a requirement, which is going to change, but we've got a lot of other work to do is, it currently says you're going to put a full legend on each sheet of plans. You can come in with a waiver that says, what we're looking for is, there's up front, you're going to have a full legend, but then if you get to a section like, you did utilities, well, on the page where utilities start, we'd expect the legends for, here's electrical, here's gas, here's, and if you go erosion controls, well, okay, now you've got a different set of symbols that are there. But depending on the plan size, I mean, if you're only talking 20 pages or something, but we understand, we're not expecting you to put a full legend for the entire plan set on every page, right? And that's what's implied currently. So be realistic.
No problem.
You don't have to go. Other comments from the board?
I
have a few.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead.
Thank you. You might want to consider where signage might be so that it's easy for people to find which business they're looking to find. I like the masonry at the bottom edge. I like masonry in general, especially coarse masonry, stone, whether or not it's real, gives sort of a classic look to a more New England classic look to that. So you might want to look at what the Dove development did in terms of the facade of the front of the building, not just breaking it up with depth, but also breaking it up with color. There's some color, but they used light and dark shading over broader areas to make it feel separate, even though it wasn't very separate. And aesthetically speaking, similarly, the large parking area being just, I mean, it has lines, but if there is any degree of curbing or even grass or little islands for trees, something that breaks up the pavement from being just pavement with paint on it would be aesthetically improved. And I think that's what I got for right now. Thanks.
Okay, noted.
I just had a question. You mentioned you're gonna put sprinklers in the building. Sprinklers in the attic.
I don't think they go in the, do they go in the attic sprinklers?
The only reason I ask is because guessing that the roof trusses are gonna be prefab trusses.
Yeah, but we still have to continue right straight through for every unit, so we have to fire, make it so fire safe straight through. In the old days, you'd get something like that, they call it a clock off. I'm a retired firefighter, so run right through the whole building.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, so we now have a petition in between every single unit that runs right up to the bridge.
Yeah, my concern is if they're prefab trusses, those prefab trusses have gusset plates that give out. That'll bring the roof in.
Yeah, what happens, if we can rate, there's any mechanicals up there, there's an issue. We can rate the ceiling, so we have listen, I'm learning more about life safety than you can ever believe. But there's all sorts of ratings, and there's UL ratings, and the systems. So if there's a system that allows us to fire rate the ceiling of the unit, and we have the petition going up the side, there's nothing up there, so there's no issue.
Okay.
Depends on what the life safety experts tell us.
Did we make the motion? Did we formally open this?
Yeah, you informally you did, yeah.
Okay, I opened.
You implied.
All right.
Still got your public comment.
Yeah, okay. Then we ought to, should we have a motion to accept this for design review so that it's technically formally open? I didn't.
No, you just opened the.
Yeah,
meeting
just open.
Because you're not accepting it, it's not.
I thought it.
Application.
Okay, so we're good. All right, so I'm gonna open this up for public comment. If there is anybody that's on the phone, *6 to unmute. Or you can raise your hand if you're on the computer.
There's nobody further participating.
Okay.
I got one more question. How close is the subdivision to getting complete approval? You know,
Within a month, Joe?
The DOT is supposed to issue by this Friday.
okay. The reason why I asked is I didn't know you have to go through the process like the town to break these off, but if your other stuff's all complete, the subdivision would be complete, so it doesn't matter. That's it. Okay, right. I wasn't sure how close it was.
And we're pretty excited. We've hired a contractor, and we're gonna go in there in a nice method that some people are going to just fragment it one phase at a time. Do the whole thing in phases. So we're into the whole road, making sure we stay under the limits of alteration of terrain. But we want to, road, and that's generally our MO. We come in and put the whole road in and get going, and we're gonna go in. I'm too old. I'm 68. I gotta get moving, you know, so make it go faster.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
The second one.
Yep, so I'm, somebody make a motion to close the design review for application. I make a motion for design review on application 223-26-C2-RC-21. Motion made by Jack Ryan, seconded by Ryan. Design review. Steve Diamond.
Diamond Eye.
Ryan, I.
EMI.
All right, unanimous. Design review is closed on that one. Now we'll move on to the other one. And I really think that we ought to have a motion to accept the design review. I feel more comfortable with that one.
You're confident with it, and I agree with it.
All right, so then you make a motion to accept application 223-6C4-RC. So move up for, okay, I make the motion to accept that application.
Second.
Brandon made the motion to accept the design review. Al seconded.
Andy, MI.
Steve,
Diamond Eye.
and Brandon. So unanimous, open for design review. Let's go.
Good evening. For the record again, Scott Cole from Beals Associates. I also have with me Josh St. Hilaire, Hilaire Motorsports. I believe everybody knows as you're driving towards the Rochester line, on the left is Hilaire Motorsports. Josh is looking to expand and do a new building, a new showroom. And this would be on lot C3 and C4 combined. So it'd be a combination of 2 lots in the same development that we spoke about in this application. So this will consist of two buildings. The way we would actually arrive this is in two phases. There will be one main phase to include the first large building. This will be a 100 by 150-foot building, 15,000 square feet. It would entail office and retail space and service, I believe, in the rear of the building. As you can see here, we have derived circulation around the building for loading. As you can imagine, with this type of use, there will be trucks loading and unloading recreational vehicles. This would be also phase two. You can see in the rear, the rectangular building. This would be their warehouse and storage building, which would be done, I believe, at a later date. This building would be, as you can see, pretty self-explanatory, would have a loading bay. As you can see, the building with the truck on the left, that would actually be 4 feet below the elevation of the building, so it would be a normal loading bay. So the trucks would go in a counterclockwise circle around phase one building. They could back right up to that building, load and unload, and then actually easily leave the site. We have provided adequate parking. As you can see in the calculations, they're parking for the retail and service. And in this type of application, we certainly want to make sure that we leave adequate overflow parking, as you can imagine, with trailers and large trucks. We have left additional parking in the gravel areas to the east and west of the building. These buildings would be, again, provided by private utilities, being septic system and private well. This building, this site here, being along 125, the location for the access has already been agreed upon, not permitted, when we were dealing with the subdivision behind for the access. Some of you may recall the previous subdivision original design had two access points, this being one of them. After further revision to the one access, this location was still utilized for these commercial lots. There was an easement left for that. By the combining of the two lots, the easement actually would not need to be utilized, so that could go away. Again, in this application, we have a drainage area here on the left. Now this pond here, Mr. Brand, this detention pond here that was for the large subdivision in back, this pond originally was oversized. We have mathematical detail to provide that. AOT is aware of that state. So we will provide at least a cellular pond, the additional, if needed, volume, and we may have a discharge directly into that pond. And again, this will be all under the purview of the AOT permit. We do understand there's a green belt here along 125. It does have substantial frontage. As you can imagine, with this kind of recreational building, a display area is very important to our client. So we would like to basically kind of merge landscaping in the greenbelt area. This will be a raised site with probably some grading and some steep slope right in front of it. We'll probably try to internally have some landscape pods and then good display area right here in front of the building, as well as on the left side of the driveway. As you can see, where you come in, that'll probably be all display area as well.
When you say display area, what do you mean?
If you can imagine you're driving down 125 currently, you can see all the recreational vehicles and the product that they sell are kind of lined on the side of 125. So that's basically what he will have at this application, just further back away from the road.
Yeah. Trailers and recreational vehicles. And when I say trailers, cargo trailers, equipment, open trailers, utility trailers, things like that. Yep. Not all the inventory would be at the road. Display is definitely important to a dealership of any kind, but especially for our.
Do you show the actual total display area you're gonna have lined up on the plan? In the past, they wanted it highlighted, so when someone comes to me with a zoning violation, I can pull the plan and say it's where they was approved. It wasn't where they were approved.
Like a square footage.
Well, usually it's laid out like a.
It has to be
rectangles laid out. I'm gonna.
You have it
show stuff here, show stuff.
Right, I started the label, that's why I asked the question. It just needs to be dimensioned so that we understand what is the actual. And it's gonna be, displays would be on board restricted to that area.
Okay, you got 2 more minutes to try to wrap it up, because Donna's got to leave, and at that point, we won't have, so
Couple of points.
Yeah, shoot, while you do that.
With the truck, you have a loading dock into the warehouse. And 2 spaces there, the 2 parking spaces right in front of that, they want to consider eliminating so the truck can pull in straight and level out, number 1. Number 2, that's phase 2. You're gonna unload, it's gonna be a loading dock, or how are you gonna load for phase 1?
So currently, and by the way, I want to introduce myself. My name's Josh St. Hilaire. I own St. Hilaire Motorsports in Barrington. I was born and raised here. Actually went to school in this building, but so currently right now we have tractor trailer trucks that come periodically. I wouldn't call it a weekly occurrence. Sometimes multiple times in a week. Sometimes we don't see them for a month or 2. Currently, we have to remove the vehicles or crates from the truck by strapping them and pulling them out and then forklifting them into our storage areas. The reason we want the loading bay, the loading dock, is to cut down the time it takes us to do that. Right now, it's kind of a time-consuming process.
You're gonna continue to do that, but.
We will have to continue to do that for now. Yes. Yep.
Okay, the board open, ask any more questions. Can I open this up for public comment, and then we'll come back? Nobody to comment. All right, I open it for public comment. Do I hear any? Hearing none, I close public comment. Okay, go ahead. I'm only doing it because we're gonna have to get this done.
I recognize it's not.
So what is this picture? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
So I realize this isn't far from a final plan, but I do also see the site has quite a bit of a grade change. What will the maximum grade of the road around the building be?
Oh, it's a good question. Actually, the differential between the 2 buildings, Steve, I've conceptually graded that with the 4-foot reveal for the loading bay. And right now it's no more than 4.5%.
That's all I was going to ask. That's it. Thanks.
This office retail building, 1 store?
One business, 1 store. 1 store, yeah. Well, currently that is what we are looking at.
Real quick, I just want to give you an example of a building footprint that he is at. See the photo, this is kind of entranceway, kind of a entranceway for this kind of use, and we just want to get your opinion on that.
Good, but I think your drawing sidewalk doesn't seem to match that conceptually. You have parking space?
Not yet.
More so the timber frame.
Yeah.
We like the timber frame entranceway, and we want it to look good. So that's really what we wanted to portray. We would like to actually have the awning go further across the building to be able to not as concerned with putting as many vehicles out in the display area by the road, but have actually on the building as well.
I think, all the comments that we had on so we're covering architecture, talked about foundation plans, make sure they're complete, showing building renderings, the fire chief, once again, and I raised this issue on the last time. Now, we got the issue of the cisterns that are sitting on the other side.
Correct.
On commercial lot 2. How far are we? Is he gonna be pleased? I mean, at some point, I don't know. Are we getting too far away?
It's close. We're actually going to set up a meeting and have a sit down with Rick. I believe by roadway, by the entranceway, we are just over 1,000 feet. We would be short if we went to the rear, but.
Are you thinking that you're going to sprinkler anything?
We're hoping to avoid it if possible.
So we ran into this on the warehouse portion. One of your competitors down the road now, and we told them there are limits according to fire codes. You can't stack anything greater than 12 feet, or that's it. You got to be sprinkled. And so we had to ensure that physically there were markings and barriers that 12 people.
I think by the way the code reads, the ceiling can't be more than 12 feet, because technically at that point you can stack over 12.
Right, and so
That's how it works out.
I think that's where we went with that.
that, that was it,
Unless you sprinkle it.
It's tough because we did have some discussions with Chief Walker and they varied based on the type of building, whether it was a metal building versus a wood building, whether you were doing fireproof sheetrocking. There was a lot of factors that played into.
Right.
I mean, the storage was definitely the storage height was a separate issue at that time of conversation, which we do need to sit down and have that discussion
So
with.
you're gonna have a meeting.
We are.
All right.
The competitor was doing certain building construction thing, but he stored similar stuff and he was stuck.
Yeah.
Right. Or he was gonna have to sprinkle and he made the decision because it's unheated. I don't know. Is this building intended to be heated?
This phase 2 building is intended to be unheated.
Okay, well, that's yeah, because, yeah, you got all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
The illumination plan,
All
when
right.
you do that, you probably get photometric.
All right, does anybody have anything else?
Photometric stone match, your lighting plan, so.
Mhm.
All right, does anybody have anything else? All right, so then I make a motion to close the design review for 22326 C4 RC 21, excuse me. Well, it's, all right, motion made by Fran, seconded by Alan. Design review. And so Steve Diamond,
Diamond Eye?
Fran, I.
Andy, am I?
All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope you've got the
Thank you.
answers to your questions. Don't feel. So we got to adjourn. We got to.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. So the next meeting will be November 16th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So here, so we here. Motion to adjourn. All right. Motion to adjourn. Jeff Rand second.
Yes.
Stay online a minute.
Andy, am I?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much.
This is not a meeting thing, but it's Stratford Regional Planning. That's why I wanted you to start. They would like to do an update. They wanted to meet with someone in the town. The select board really wasn't interested. Want to know if the planning board is interested about trying to put them on the schedule.